The town of Red Bluff had always been a quiet place where dust drifted lazily across the road and nothing truly unexpected ever happened. That morning, however, the silence cracked before the sun even climbed over the ridge. Elias Grant, a rancher known for being steady and calm, rode into town with a speed that made everyone pause. His coat was covered in dirt, his hat looked like it had been crushed by the wind, and his horse breathed heavy clouds of exhaustion. Tied to the back of his saddle was a locked wooden crate, the size of a small trunk, and that alone drew curious stares from windows and porches. Sheriff Maddox stepped out of his office as Elias pulled up. "You look like you've outrun the devil," the sheriff said, trying to keep things light, but Elias didn't even smile. He simply said, "You need to see what I've found." "Everyone does." His voice carried something unsettling, a mix of dread and urgency that didn't fit a man like him. Within minutes, a crowd gathered. The butcher, the blacksmith, shopkeepers, cowboys, travelers, all drawn like moths to the strange crate in the middle of the street. Elias stood over it, jaw tight. The sheriff approached and put a hand on the rancher's arm. "Elias, don't do this here. If you open that box in front of everyone, you'll cause a panic. Let's talk inside." But Elias shook his head hard. His eyes were fixed on the crowd as if he already knew what would happen. "I'm not hiding this," he said. "What I found isn't something that can stay quiet." Before anyone could argue, Elias unlatched the heavy iron lock. The lid creaked open, and the moment it lifted, the crowd fell dead silent. Inside were twisted black metal shards, unfamiliar, sharp-edged and humming faintly like they held a heartbeat. They weren't parts of any machine the townsfolk recognized. They almost looked burned from the inside, as if they'd been alive once and then shattered. A ranch hand reached forward, but jerked his hand back when the metal vibrated softly. Someone whispered, "That ain't from around here." Miss Lorna, the schoolteacher, murmured, "That doesn't look forged." "It looks grown." Murmurs turned to arguments. Some shouted it was danger. Others insisted Elias was scaring people for nothing. The sheriff looked defeated. The mayor looked furious. But Elias stood firm, raising his voice above the chaos. "Something fell from the sky last night. This is just a piece of it. And if we pretend nothing happened, we're fools." The town was outraged, but no one could unsee what lay inside that crate. By midday, Red Bluff felt like a pot left boiling with no lid. Everywhere you walked, people were arguing about Elias Grant and the strange metal he'd revealed. The saloon buzzed louder than usual, not with laughter or card games, but with heated voices. Some townsfolk claimed Elias had saved them by telling the truth. Others said he had acted recklessly and stirred fear on purpose. The sheriff tried to restore calm, but even he couldn't break through the rising tide of frustration. Miss Lorna, the schoolteacher, studied one of the fragments Elias had allowed her to examine earlier. The metal pulsed faintly in her palm, like a heartbeat. Trapped inside cold iron, she showed the markings, scratched across its surface to a growing circle of townsfolk. "These patterns, they look deliberate," she said carefully. "Not tools, not machinery, something else." Her quiet voice only added fuel to the fire. "But carved by who?" Miner Harlan demanded. "Ain't nobody near that ridge. And I've seen every kind of ore that mountain spits out. This ain't normal." People began sharing their own experiences from the previous night. A ranch hand swore he'd seen a streak of blue fire shoot across the sky. A shopkeeper said the ground shook hard enough to rattle her jars. Others denied everything and accused Elias of exaggerating for attention. Confusion twisted into frustration, and frustration into anger. That was when Mayor Tillman arrived, stomping down the main road like a man ready for war. His face was red, and his voice carried all the way from the general store to the sheriff's office. "This is outrageous!" he shouted. Elias Grant had no authority to frighten this town. "We handle threats with order, not chaos." Elias didn't back down. He stood in the center of the street, arms crossed, calm but unmovable. "People have the right to know," he said. "Keeping quiet won't make danger disappear." The mayor jabbed a finger at him. "You created panic!" "Sheriff, confiscate the fragments now." Maddox hesitated. Clearly torn, but the crowd exploded in protest before he could speak. By late afternoon, Nearly half the town had gathered rifles, lanterns, and supplies. They were determined to ride to the ridge themselves and see what had fallen. The mayor yelled at them to stop, calling them fools, but they marched past him anyway. The tension in Red Bluff grew thick enough to feel in the air. Doors slammed, voices rose, and as night crept over the town, a faint rumble echoed from far beyond the hills, a reminder that the mystery wasn't finished yet. Something out there was waiting. At sunrise, Red Bluff woke with a tension that felt almost physical, like the whole town was holding its breath. Horses were saddled early, lanterns packed, rifles checked. More than 30 riders gathered near the sheriff's office, ready to head toward the North Ridge where Elias Grant had found the strange metal. Even those who had argued the night before now showed a mix of fear and curiosity. The sheriff gave a short warning about staying calm and not touching anything they didn't understand. But everyone already knew this wasn't going to be a normal ride. The trail to the ridge stretched across open land, quiet except for the wind brushing through dry grass. As the group neared the ridge, people noticed the change immediately. The air grew warmer, like someone had lit a fire underground. Birds circled far away, avoiding the area completely. Then they saw it, a long, blackened trench carved into the earth. It twisted across the land as if something enormous had crashed, skidded, and torn up everything in its path. Deputy Cole knelt and picked up a handful of soil. The dirt crumbled between his fingers, partly melted and strangely glassy. "Lightning doesn't do this," he muttered. "Nothing natural does," no one argued. At the far end of the trench, half buried under rock and scorched soil, lay a massive curved shape. It resembled metal but wasn't shaped like any wagon part, boilerplate, or mining tool anyone had ever seen. It was smooth, dark, and faintly glowing along its cracks, as if heat still lived inside it. When the group approached, the ground trembled with a soft vibration, not enough to knock them over, but enough to freeze every rider in place. "Back up," Sheriff Maddox ordered immediately. "Nobody touches it." Even the doubters stepped away quickly. The thing felt wrong, ancient and new at the same time, like a piece of something that didn't belong in their world. A few minutes later, Mayor Tillman arrived with his tiny group of supporters. His coat was dusty, his expression sour, ready to scold anyone who would listen. But the moment he saw the curved object, his anger slipped away. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Elias turned to him. "Still think I exaggerated?" he asked quietly. The mayor didn't respond. For once, he seemed completely unsure. Sheriff Maddox took a steady breath and made the decision everyone had been waiting for. "We set camp here. We establish watches. No one goes near it without my order. Whatever fell last night, it isn't done." The riders nodded, fear and determination mixing in their eyes. For the first time, Red Bluff stood united, not by choice, but by the undeniable truth lying in the ridge. Something had arrived, and it had changed everything.